over to you.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you, Melissa, for having me today. It's my pleasure to be here, and I thank all of you for joining in a topic that really is getting a lot of interest these days for a good reason: accessibility in distance learning, making the case for universal design. So I'm believing everybody is able to see my slides. The grants, the programs that I support or coordinate are OTAP, the Oregon Technology Access Program, and regional and statewide services for students with orthopedic impairment. And both of those are grants that have been around for more than 35 years and housed at the beautiful downtown Douglas ESD here in Roseburg, Oregon. And both are grants that are through the Oregon Department of Education. And so we've got a rich history, and I am Deb Fitzgibbons. This is my 5th year now here in Oregon. I moved here from the Midwest. I have a background in, well, my master's is in assistive technology, and I have a background of accessibility and universal design and assistive tech at the college level, and then as a trainer, a North American trainer for a literacy support software company. And then the last 8 years before I moved here, I was a computer access facilitator. So that means I supported 5 districts in the St. Louis County area in St. Louis, Missouri. So that's really where a lot of my student interaction came from, and working and developing strategies to overcome barriers. And now I really miss that face-to-face, but I'm glad I have folks like you who can tell me what's going on, tell me the areas that you need support, and that we support through professional development. And we also have a loan library so that people can try tools without having to purchase them. They can take for a 45-day loan and just send them back to us. So those are some of the things that we do. I am not educated or trained in TBI. As I said, my degree is in assistive technology, but traumatic brain injury is something that's very personal to me from my own father. A number of years ago, I think about 16 now, he was in a car accident. And I remember being thankful that I had a bit of a background in assistive technology, because from day one, I was starting to see the deficits, and I was creating PowerPoints that had the pictures of all of the family and the names, and I shared those with the therapists, and they were helping him, and it was really making a difference in him trying to gain control of who these people were. When he first came out of his car accident, he thought he was 20 and was shocked to find he had 5 daughters and a wife. And so I just trying to help him put all of those file drawers back in order. Just gave me some experience that I never knew how important it was going to be. But I'm thrilled to be here. Today we're going to take a look at and really focusing on processes. If you were here to get a big list of apps, I can give you a list, but really the processes and using those and helping learners to learn not just one and done on a lesson, but learning the process, so then they are able to engage that process again. So we're going to identify some common strengths and barriers, looking at learners in the hybrid learning environment. So that's really anywhere. And looking at considering the areas that are struggles, potential barriers, and then looking at some of the technologies or strategies that may help in those areas. And all guided by the principles of universal design for learning. And you'll see how all that ties in together. So I'm going to begin with, we begin with making sure that we are on the same page for common language. If we think of the meetings that we go into and people start spouting off the acronyms and everybody assuming that everybody knows, a lot of times that just really leads to confusion. So really making sure we have our definitions, looking at the learner profile through the framework of the SET, that's student, environment, tasks, and tools. And that is a framework that we often use in the world of assistive technology to consider tools that might be supportive. We're going to pair the barriers with technology and strategies, and then really tying it all together. Why are we talking about universal design? Well, primarily it's because it's why we all have in common that we need to support all learners. So the framework, or just a little bit of a overview, the framework that I'm going to be using is one that we use in a lot of our trainings at OTAP and RSOI, and it is the PACT. And the PACT is a framework for considering access to assistive technology and its use through the processes that you all know. If you're teachers, you know that we began with single word vocabulary. Then we use that vocabulary in context, in sentences and paragraphs, moving on to be able to produce expression through writing and through being able to share knowledge. So this is the framework we're using. So we're really going to start with, or learn about. Again, making sure that we're on the same page for vocabulary. So what is assistive technology? Well, I'm glad you asked, because assistive technology at its most basic is anything, any item that's off the shelf, whether you acquire it commercially with that purpose, or it's something that you modify. You see a lot of AT maker fairs now, where they are looking at the need and then taking what they have and repurposing it so that it can increase, maintain, or improve capabilities of a child with a disability. Excuse me, so sorry. Always happens whenever you start doing too much talking. But you'll see that I have color-coded any in our presentation that is a definition. It's color-coded in green. And that color coding helps us to say, okay, green, now we're going to be learning about vocabulary. If we moved on to using that in context, we're going to be using blue. So again, just a color-coded system that can help our brain to get there quickly and reduce some of that cognitive load. So another thing I might do if I'm in a meeting, I might have somebody play the role of the vocabulary reminder. And so anytime we come to that word, it could be that you hold up something. I could print this out and you could hold it up. So not only do we want to define, but we want to be able to remind whenever we are using those words. So you may say, well, what assistive, educational, what is that? It's some really gray area these days, because a lot of our schools have maybe one-to-one Chromebooks. And so if everybody's got that, is it assistive or is it educational? Well, the way to tell is if you take that away from everybody and the person who has no plan B they don't have a way to write anymore because that was the tool they relied on, for that person, it's assistive. And it needs to be documented as such. And we know that in a transient society, we don't want the next person to have to reinvent the wheel. So if it's something that everybody has, make sure you're documenting what works for that individual. So I put in a couple of slides. I'm not going to focus on it, but again, assistive technology services. You don't have assistive technology without the services that go with it. Those of evaluating it, providing the device, helping in repairs, learning how to use it, how to advocate. And so all of those pieces come along with assistive technology. And you may know that assistive technology is in the IEP in Oregon and across the country. And so it is something that everyone should be considering and when they come to the IEP time. You'll also notice, and Oregon is one of those few states that has, and you'll see it here, does the student require one or more specialized formats? And so that's really getting to accessible educational materials. I'd like to see that changed a little bit, because really it implies that the person has a visual impairment, and it's really more than that. So I'd like to see that defined a little bit, but those are some of the things that are in our IEP. Unfortunately, we have a number of IEPs and systems across our state. So there are some people who are still completing IEPs that this question about accessible materials doesn't show up. So we got some work to do. But what are AIM? What are accessible educational materials? And what they are is something that is either print-based, technology-based. They're educational materials, so it includes the material and the technologies that are going to be used to access it. So it makes them usable, again, usable across the widest range of variability. And so this is the definition that comes from the Cass Center, but the Department of Justice adds a little piece here that I've got highlighted. The difference is that it's substantially equivalent ease of use. So in the past, if you said, what are accessible materials? Well, I gave them access. I handed them a book. Well, it's a lot more than that, because we know there are lots of people who that book might be nothing more than a paperweight. So we're beginning with that. And so accessible really means equivalent ease of use. And so if you think about all of the things that you're offering to the kids, this should be that a tier 1 level of support for everybody, whether they have a diagnosis or not, making sure that they have access, accessible materials, so that then they can use it in whatever way that they need to or prefer to. And so again, there are laws around that. And really what I want to point out is that it is a timely provision of materials. So that means at the same time that everybody else is receiving their material. And so one thing that I'm really excited about here in Oregon, we have been chosen as one of 7 states across the US that is going to be getting technical support from the National AIM Center. That's in Massachusetts. And so we are looking at, we have on our team, we have a leadership team that includes the folks from RTI and includes the folks who are working with English learners. And so we've got a cross population, and then we've got teams that represent early intervention and elementary and all the way through to higher ed. So what we're hoping to do and plan to do over the next 4 years of this grant is to develop a unified system across the state to make sure that everybody is getting materials. And so the link that you'll see here that goes to the SMORE newsletter takes you to a little bit more information and about the players or the people who are on that team. And so we will be looking for 3 school districts to help us to implement and talk about the issues so that we know the work that needs to be done. So if this sounds like something that your district is interested in, please let me know. So in the meantime, hopefully everybody will start making sure that they're purchasing materials that are accessible. But in the meantime, if someone needs materials and it needs to be documented in their IEP, it's through the process of documenting print disability. And so that is not a new disability. It is a classification. So if someone has difficulty accessing the paper that you hand them, that for what reason? Well, it could be that they can't see it, or they can't read it, or they can't independently interact with it and turn the pages. So this is something that needs to be documented in the IEP so that you can interact with publishers and the places to get this material. So this is something that could apply to everyone, making sure that you have the material that is accessible. And so then finally, the definition I want to make sure we're all on the same page is universal design for learning. And all of these topics are kind of abstract until you really take them in and pull them apart and see what that means, where the rubber meets the road in the classroom. But universal design it's a framework, and it's all scientific based on how the brain learns. And it fosters engagement by presenting information in a variety of ways, and then allowing someone to use a variety of methods to be able to express what they have learned. So I've given you a link to the Cass site. And really, if we boil it down, universal means all, everybody. It means that person who is going through trauma, who's having difficulty in accessing and focusing. It means the reading fluency, processing speed, organization. It means that person who's hearing impaired or has difficulty with time management. The materials we choose need to be accessible so that we can help and reach all of these all of these areas that students struggle with. And that one I put in red there is one that is underlying to a lot of our disabilities. If we struggle, the self-esteem also struggles. So all of these people need to have material and need to have consideration of what they need before we get to the classroom. So some of the things that we're seeing now are people who were dependent on the paper in the classroom. Well, what are we sending to the kids? Sometimes we're sending paper, but if that didn't work in the classroom, it might not work at home. So just making sure that we're considering all of the environments. And here I put a link to the UDL guidelines, and you've probably seen these before, but we're just looking at them in a slightly different light. You look at the area of engagement and bringing kids in and making sure that they are in attention. And so it really looks at recruiting their interest, and not only that, but sustaining it and helping them work through things so that they feel good about it, and now they have the confidence to keep going and to self-regulate, looking at the various means of representation and ways that we can express. And so there's lots more in there that we can dig apart, and I'll certainly do more professional development down the line if we want to go there. But universal design is something that is in the guidelines or in the mission of our state in looking at equity, diversity, inclusion, and universal design, making sure that we can reach all of our kids. So where do we begin? Well, first of all, we begin with high expectations. And again, promoting that culture of high expectations. I firmly believe that if we look at where the kids struggle, kids, young, older, old, where we struggle, there are tools that can be added to the toolbox to make anyone successful. So I firmly believe with the right tools, people can reach their goals, and I'm sure you do too. And so what are the things we can do? Well, again, it's a positive mindset. It's a growth mindset. We're focusing on strengths and abilities. We're not focusing on somebody being broken. We're focusing on a system that needs to know how to bend to meet the various and diverse needs of our kids. So really building resiliency and helping our kids feel empowered, know what they need, and then help them to speak up for it. So where do we begin today? Well, we begin with identifying. And the framework that I'm using here, again, is one that is used in the world of assistive technology a lot. It is the student environment, tasks, and tools. And so this is the framework that we would look at in identifying the likes and dislikes of the student. And all of those things are relevant. The student's struggles and how they learn the best. And this information is really something that is generally pulled from the IEP. But if you click on the link in your presentation, that's going to take you to a template that you can feel free to download and use. But really, it's just a framework for considering all of these aspects. And so when we think of, first of all, who's coming to your classroom, this is the S, this is the student information. And so we are going to look at what they like, what their strengths are, and educational concerns. So let's say here, I've got educational concerns that could be potential barriers in the classroom. Their time management, does that fit with kids with TBI? Reading, fluency, decoding, comprehension, note-taking. As I read down this list, you're probably saying, yes, those are areas that my learner who has a traumatic brain injury, that's areas they struggle. But you'll also think about the rest of the students that you work with, and you're probably going to see a continuum of barriers across throughout your whole class about these same areas. And so these are the barrier areas, potential barrier areas that we're going to be looking at. It's not necessarily about diagnosis, it's about function and what that means in the classroom. So as we move here, this I took from a document that Melissa shared with me, Melissa McCart, and it's taken from the Distance Online Learning for students with concussion and brain injuries. So this is a piece, and Melissa, I'm believing that people probably have access to this, but if it's in a spot that there's a link, if somebody wants to put that in the chat box, that'd be great. I wasn't sure where it lived, but some of the things that we know, that visual scanning, searching for the information, attention, focusing on what's on the screen, and memory. Memory is huge. From 1 minute to the next, I remember my dad, he, it could be that he could remember something that happened when he was a kid, but of course couldn't remember what he had for breakfast. But and that would float in and out. And sometimes he would be watching television, and then for the rest of the day, he was on a ship that was sinking. And so, in and out of memory and floating from dream to life was part of where he was at. Being able to recall anything, a little bit of mix up in the file drawers there. So cognitive fatigue, and this is so crucial whenever we think about the world where our kids are now and where we are, that fatigue of always having to be working with the cognitive demands. And at home, it's just really, it's such a different story, because so much of it is now on our student or on the family. And the cognitive fatigue is huge. And then the emotional change. These are areas that persons with TBI struggle with, but now, as you know, there's probably a lot more of us who are struggling with these. I remember times whenever I would try to insert reality into my dad's conversations when the ship was sinking, and really what it did, it brought about anger, and you don't tell me that I don't know this. And so these moods are heightened in our learners with TBI, but right now everybody is heightened. And so we have to remember these things. Whenever we look at how our learners learn best, I think we're going to see that not only kids who have traumatic brain injury, but all kids are going to do better if we take away that pressure of time. And I don't mean giving them forever, but let's don't put everything in such a stressful time, and then, my goodness, don't set a timer next to them, because when we're already heightened with anxiety, that doesn't help anybody. So looking at, again, alternative methods to take in the information and to be able to express it, breaking things down, not having it all be so overwhelming, and just encouraging progress, and even recognizing the smallest things are progress. Again, I know I'm talking to you who work with students face-to-face each day, and these are things that you probably already know. But when we think about it, it's something that your kids will do better with, something that probably all kids can do better with. So this is why we start stepping back and looking at who's coming to our classroom, what are our expectations, and how can we meet those needs of all of the kids. And so we look at the student, and then we look at the environment. What is the setup of the classroom? Well, now, in the previous times when we do a set, it was usually the gen ed room or the sped room, and now we are taking that new environment. So really, we're taking all of these same things and saying, okay, what if our environment now is at home? And so what are the supports for the student? Are they the same at home as they were at school? Probably not. And if not, how can we better help them when we are back in the classroom to have those skills for independence? And so we're going to look at what is the technology and what are the skills. And so looking at this for each individual, and I've had students who completed it on themselves, did their own set, and recognizing the tools and coming to understand their own diagnosis in terms of what those struggles might be. So I recommend that, yes, we're looking at the environment, but I really think that we need to start with taking an inventory of what tools are available. Are they available in the classroom? Well, then are they also available at home? And so as we look at it, now we've got new pieces of technology that need to come into the mix. And so I'm just going to ask, were there any questions to this point, Amanda, that we needed to address, or are we good to go?
It looks like Randy had a question about the set procedure. She wanted to know if there are districts that are trained in actually using that set procedure in Oregon.
And which procedure was that, the set procedure?
The set procedure, yeah.
Yes, yes. Whenever we do assistive technology teams training, we always begin with the set procedure, and then and working through with students. There are other frameworks. You'll hear the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Institute that has some other frameworks and some more pieces with deeper questions that may dive deeper into some of those areas. But the set is used around the state, and it is one that if you wanted to work through as a team with a student, I'm happy to jump on and lead you through a set process. But it's used here, and it's used really around the country. It's been around for a long time. It was created by Dr. Joy Zabala, and she is also with the CAS Center. She has done trainings here on the set, and it is used by a number of school districts.
Great, thank you.
If you want more information on that, please let me know. Again, I am making notes. You might notice that I have a parking lot behind me. So if something is relevant to, or something that we want to know in the future, I use a parking lot. This is something that you could use also with your students. At home, I have set up that I have a screen that can show my parking lot, and I make notes, and you'll see that for my parking lot, I have car-shaped notes. So I make notes of the things that may not fit right now in our discussion, but it helps me to know that I can come back here to my parking lot. I do use this with students, and I do use it in meetings, and it helps us to stay on track. So your first, and again, some of these questions are ones, and I'm not going to go through each one of them. I'm just giving you this as a way to take inventory. The learning management system has a lot of things built into it, and some of them are accessible and some of them are not. The link that I put at the bottom of the page here is a project that we are working on at OTAP that is taking, listing all of the learning management systems and highlighting the areas that it can make accommodation. If your lesson doesn't have it, if your materials don't have it, well, then sometimes your learning management system may have a tool that can help accommodate for that. Also, your video conferencing software. Did you know that Zoom now has closed captioning built in? It is in beta, it is in K-12. I know that they have it at some of the government offices, but it is now built in to Zoom, and you just have to turn it on. So there's different features, and so really when everyone went to distance learning, people were asking for support, but they really didn't even know what they had access to. And so what I think is that if you were able to do an inventory of the tools that you have, and we're able to share it with the people who were working with the students or with the parents so they can see what tools you're using, having somewhat of a profile can help people know what is available. So again, I put some questions here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it can just help you think of the tools when you look at the inventory that's already available to you. And so from there, we're just going to look at what are the barriers, and then doing a feature match. So here's just an example. If I needed a tool for executive functioning, well, first I'm going to look at what is my device, what is my input method, looking at what I need for output. Do I need sound? Is it something I want to have alarms? And then looking at some of the other features. How does it alert somebody? Is it something that's going to be discrete that I can use everywhere I go? There are clocks and timers that have vibrators. so that I can just put it on my arm and it's just going to give me a little vibration when it's time to do something. And I think we all know that reminders are helpful for everyone. Kids are probably going to need help in knowing how to set that up. And those are things that you can do and do as part of your lesson, because it's not intuitive to say, well, how much time do I need and how do I set it? So all of these things are better if they're explicitly taught with the student or with the group. But here's where that feature match comes in. What do you need for this type of a tool? And so then looking at, maybe you already have something after you've taken inventory. Maybe you already have something that you need, but it's important to always look at what you have first. So often people go out on a shopping spree and want to find something. Well, there's probably the latest and newest, but you probably already have something that you can use. And if it is something that is, as shown here, a lower tech or higher tech, it's always good to start with the lower tech. And it is less intimidating whenever you are teaching a new skill to not do two red letter things at once. Don't expect me to learn a new technology at the same time I'm trying to learn to write the sentences. So making sure that you're starting with the lower and then building from there. So matching features. Well, and of course, if you look at the document that I referenced, and I think that there may be a link to it in there, this is the one that Melissa and the team came up with. The display is something that is crucial. If you sit down at our computer, the first thing we're looking at is our display. And so we know that one of the major issues with kids who have traumatic brain injury is too much screen time. And not only just because it has the fatigue that comes along with it, but sometimes it triggers the seizures and the things that may have been under control in the classroom. So how do we reduce that, and what can we do? Increasing the size of the font on the page is something that is very basic, but it is less overwhelming when you don't see so much on the page. And then screen masking is something that is built into some of our programs, but it might just give you a little bit of a, oh, I see you turned on closed captioning. Yay. I would always turn it on, because even though you think that it's really for somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing, if I don't have it turned on, I always have somebody say, can you turn that on? Because it's good for so many other things. It's for comprehension, for focus. And so if in doubt, turn it on. And so being able to reduce the glare, and I've got another slide on that, but really starting with the display and making sure that if that's what somebody should be relying on, finding ways to reduce that. Maybe giving something in a format that they can listen to that is not on the screen. But we know the display is where we're going to start, and starting with what's already built into the device. There are built-in accessibility features, and you probably know this, for every device. And so I put the link here for the one in Microsoft, but some of the things that you may do, you may change the contrast. So instead of white or black on white, you may change it to have white on a dark background. And that is really more comforting and soothing for the eye. So those are some of the things. In cursor adjustment, you can have, you can adjust your cursor so that it actually has a tail or a trail so that you can see and follow the motion. Magnification, of course, and then contrast. The link here is a link that tells you more about all of those features inside of Windows. And of course, same thing for Mac. You're going to have access, and here's the accessibility link here for the support. Dictation, you can turn it to dark mode, and you can, so if you're working and it happens to be a different time of day, you can have things set so the light changes. And if these are things that you want to know more about, I'm certainly happy to go into those in another session. Just let me know. But changing the size of the cursor, and all of those things are available in Mac, in the iOS operating system. And I like the Assistive Touch myself because it allows you to get to shortcuts. How many times are you trying to help someone to know what the access or the URL is, and it's just a challenge to always type that in new. Well, the assistive touch is going to be able to give you access to shortcuts quickly. So anything that you can do to reduce that worry, that cognitive load, helping to make it a more welcoming environment. Some of these things are considered more about ergonomics, but when we think about working in our home, we're going to be talking about some of the other pieces. Of course, reducing monitor glare, dimming the overhead lights. When we talk about the strain on the eyes to begin with, it's a challenge, but again, if we're talking about potential to increase seizures, well, let's start with the dim overhead lights. Let's turn those off. Let's have another light station. As I said, I use the halo light myself whenever I work, just one that's intended for vlogging, excuse me, but it just makes a more ambient light. And so stay away from the fluorescent lights. And you may even want to put something over the computer just to help reduce the glare and angle the monitor. So the 20/20 rule, and this is one that you probably need to set up a timer for because you will take a break for 20 seconds, look away, look at something 20 feet away, and do that every 20 minutes. It helps to reduce the eye strain, and that's not just for our kids, it's also for us. And so making sure that you have those breaks could be a timer. Maybe you also have a timer where you now listen to calming music. But all of those things are helping to reduce the stress and invite a more open attitude and a more open and welcoming environment for learning. In seating, this one, it needs to be an ergonomic chair. So anybody who is, after all of this time, anybody who is still slumped over their kitchen table is asking for pain and is not really in the position for the best learning. The YouTube link that I put here is one that I borrowed from somebody who recently talked to us about ergonomics on another webinar. And it's really a good one that takes you through the pain points. And so share that one, I shared it a lot. But just making sure that you're ergonomic to start with. And that you have the right eyesight or the right eye line. I have been going to the chiropractor and getting acupuncture a bit lately because I wasn't paying attention to these things. And so if you have your head turned constantly for as little as 10 degrees, be prepared for pain and being out of alignment. And so don't wait to fix it up front and making sure that you're not bent over and looking at your screen in this manner. It's pain and it's hard on your eyes. So let's talk technology. Are you with me? Talking text-to-speech, these are some of the tools and some of the areas that they address. Text-to-speech has been around for a long time. It's going to be some of those built-in features that you're seeing in the accessibility. And sometimes you may have a license to something that your school has that can also transfer to home. But this is helping to have access to grade level content and reduces barriers to decoding. It helps with writing, increasing focus. So if I have my headphones on and I have it in my face and in my ears, it helps me to focus and kind of to block out the other noises. So this is something that, again, universal design, everybody should have access to it. Of course, if you're grading on reading content, then you may not have that at all times, but it is something that is allowable on our state test. If you're not sure of what format or how a student learns best, the PAR and the UPAR is just a protocol for reading. So it's available for free as a download so that you can, and what it is you are having a person read on their own and answer questions, having a computer read and answer questions, and then having a human reader to answer questions. And just looking at how does the person learn best. And I think you'll find some really interesting data. And yes, this one too is used a lot around the state, but it just helps. It's amazing to see. I just worked with this with a group of kids who are in behavior classrooms, and one student that I had was reading at a second grade level, and that's the material that they were giving him. But through this, it showed that he was able to comprehend at an 8th grade level. And so it's really some eye-opening data that you may want to take a look at. And Don Johnston is the person who has it. I'm not trying to sell anything. It is available in a free paper copy. Speech to text. Again, it's not for everybody, but none of these tools are for everybody. I hear people say, well, then just give them just let them speak it because they're so much better that way. Well, I understand where they may be fluent that way, but I've also had students who, as soon as you put a mic in front of them, they couldn't think and compose, and then they were worried about who else was seeing them. So again, it's not for everybody, but the speech to text that is built into our programs now is so much more accurate and doesn't need training. You may know that inside of Google Chrome, that it's something that is free, that is just a click, and it's much easier and much more accurate. But it helps with note-taking, writing, increasing focus, anxiety, and I can't say enough how having the right tools can reduce the anxiety and the cognitive load so that now we're ready to learn the topics instead of worrying about and having the consistency of having these tools available helps me to know that I'm ready. Captioning, again, just mentioned that, supports comprehension and is good for people way beyond the deaf part of hearing population. It makes it possible. And I had someone tell me that they can't always attend our meeting, but they have 2 screens and they have a meeting up over here with the closed captioning. So there's another use for it. You can be part of that meeting without having to have the sound turned. Word prediction is another. Typically, word prediction when on your phone, it's the shortcuts. So word prediction is great for somebody who has fine motor difficulty because it gives shortcuts. Somebody who has spelling challenges, and somebody who has maybe limited vocabulary because they always use the same words. You know how it is whenever you're not sure how to spell that. Well, I'm not going to tackle that big word. I'm just going to come back to a 4 or 5 letter word that I already know. So word prediction can help in increasing the support and the confidence to know they've got the right word. So again, lots of executive functioning support organization, task management, scheduling. And these things are, you can look for the technology, but what I'm going to say is these things are so much retained so much deeper if they are part of your class. So if you want me to record an assignment, then take me through that process until I don't need to have you take me through it anymore. Give me visual supports and then back off on that. But being able to set timers and scheduling, all of these things are not something that is intuitive. And when there's somebody who has difficulty with memory and confidence and paying attention, these things really need to be explicitly taught. And it can just be part of what you're doing as you're going through a lesson or interaction with the kids. Note-taking support, again, all of these things can help with independence. I've heard people say in the classroom that, oh no, we don't worry about that because I read everything to them. I have to wonder what they're doing now whenever they can't read to them and they're at home trying to do their reading. So independence is under all of this. So I said I wasn't going to do a big app dump and just mention a bunch of different apps. There's so many out there, and I can do a session like that in the future if you want. But this one is, you'll see that if you click on this, it says Tools for All Platforms. It's going to take you to Call Scotland. And you're going to laugh, but Call Scotland, comes out of the UK, but there are experts here in the US who help with this. And you're going to see circles of tools and the function that they support. And then it's going to give you apps and tools that are listed for that. So if you know that you have an iPad, you're going to see a chart of iPad tools. And so what is the function you need it for? Organization, okay, all right there. And so I would look at those, download them, and look at what you've already got. Again, you might already have some of the tools that you need. Well, including a link, the web link or link to websites for some other information that you may want to look at, differentiating instructions. Reading Rockets has some really good information about accessible formats and the, let's say, color coding, for instance. What is appropriate on a site? Well, basically you can say that you need to have the most difference between the foreground and the background. So many people try to get creative with what it looks like, but then you might end up with a yellow on a background that just doesn't really do well. And so this is going to take you through what are the most accessible and some tools for RTI. I really like the one here, Lesson Picks. It's a subscription. I'm not trying to sell it, but it's $36 a year. And it helps you to make all kinds of materials and varying activities with your vocabulary. Another one that is being used. So lots of good tools here. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we all do is share our successes. It's great to have an opportunity to talk about what's working for kids and sharing. But one thing I wanted to do, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get this completed today, and I did. I am happy to say that I just finished writing a chapter for a book that is a compilation of work from editors or educators around the country. This book, the chapter I wrote is about universal design. And again, it's in the framework of the PACT. The whole book is around that framework. I'm not trying to sell you a book, but these are some of the strategies that have been working. These are some that we used at Special School District years ago. And so I just wanted you to be able to see some of the pieces I put together. I'm not going to go in depth because I want to make sure that you have time for questions. But what I have done is I took struggle, what's a universal problem, and then you're looking at some of the universal solutions. So here I am just going to use my tool. This is a PDF document. A PDF is accessible. I'm going to be able to click on any part.
Classrooms and homes are extremely busy places.
So the tool that I'm using
curriculum instruction
is Read and Write for Google. It is a tool that is by subscription, but for teachers, it's free and it's free all the time. So if you're interacting with a student and here's my PDF, this is the toolbar I'm going to be able to have. If I have a student who is using this and I say, oh, this is important, I can highlight. And I can come here and I can highlight what's important. And then I can either make a vocabulary list with it, or I can highlight that. And when I come to the end, I can pull all of my highlights into one document. So now I've got a condensed study guide. You can do this. I had a class of kids who were athletes who were all failing biology. And so we had our material digitally. We highlighted as we went along and just practiced on what is important here. And again, that instruction on how to use the tool, and then backing off on those prompts as you go along. I wanted to share this with you because I'm kind of proud of it. It is a sneak peek at the book and giving you some ideas. What is some of the universal problems? Well, the lack of vocabulary and language. So some strategies universal that you might want to use. Lack of access to grade level material. Using a multi-sensory teaching approach are some of the solutions. But I wanted to get this, and I was really having a hard time with formatting. So I got it in a framework that I think is something that you might find useful. But this is something that I just completed. The book will be out in February, and I'm looking forward to sharing that, but you're getting a sneak preview of my chapter. So I have given that to Amanda so that she can share with you. And so in summary, when we look at the struggles or the challenges for kids with traumatic brain injury, if we step back, those on some level are ones that all of the kids in their classes experience in distance learning or in the classroom. Helping to introduce tools, and not a different tool for everybody. And I'm not saying the same tool is going to work for everybody, but just helping kids learn how to use it in a process that is a teaching process and is not just one and done. So helping in vocabulary, helping to know what a word means. Sometimes we will also explore what it doesn't mean. So some of the strategies that we're going to have are going to be set up in the environment. Sometimes it's going to be the technology, and sometimes it's going to be strategies in building routines and remembering that the first 3 and the last 3 minutes of every class are the most memorable for kids, making sure that we're doing things that are maybe announcing what's coming and having summaries at the end. And these are things you may do normally, but when we have such a wide variety of abilities and challenges, particularly in the virtual world, making sure that we're giving opportunities to explore and learn the vocabulary. And some of these things may be what you are helping kids to do when you're not online with them. And some of them are ways that you can structure your time online with them so they are learning the skills instead of being concerned about how they're learning. So there you go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if there are any questions, I am happy to answer those.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really fabulous. Everyone, this is your opportunity to ask questions of Deb. We have her here live, and she is such an amazing resource. So if you do have questions, please go down to your chat or use the Q&A, and we would be happy to read those to her. And while we're waiting on that, I did send out that sample chapter, so you will have that at the top of your email. If you don't get it, please check your spam or just let me know, and I would be happy to resend that. And I did see that there were a couple of questions from folks who missed the first round of handouts. So if for some reason you don't see those in your email, please reach out, let me know, I will resend them.
Sometimes when we're talking about topics that are abstract, you know, like I said, if somebody was coming hoping to get a list of tools, well, I gave you some information that can help you with that. But some of the terms, when they're a little more abstract, it takes a little time to wrap your brain around what that means. I know myself, I don't always have the questions right away. I always do better when I go away and process. So I want to make sure that you have information that you can contact me and let me know what more that you might need from me. So my information again is in the PowerPoint. And a PowerPoint is accessible in some ways, but I'll say that a PDF is even more accessible, and particularly when you're using tools such as screen readers. And so PDF is a really good tool for a really good format.
Yeah, looks like we have a question. This is from Eric. And Eric says, what are some resources that teams can provide parents who are supervising students engaged in distance learning, how to stay on task, setting boundaries, etc.?
Okay. Well, staying on task, first of all, making sure that there's an understanding of what that task is. And I say that because I know that sometimes we'll say, okay, we need you to listen. Well, are you on the same page as far as what that means? Does it mean that you have to have your screen turned on, that I have to be able to see that you're listening? And so first of all, making sure that the expectations are clear for everyone. And I would say that really making it fun is a big key. And I'm hearing the most successes right now with families and learners through partnership and being able to have the families online with you and to demonstrate and share while the families are there. Then they can carry over some of those activities when you're not. And I realize getting the engagement from families right now is a challenge to start with because there are so many things going on and people with dual roles of being employees and teachers and parents and all of those things at the same time, but really taking it down to the most basic and being engaging, those strategies of UDL for engagement and using different tools. Don't feel that you have to switch up tools all the time. You can use the same tools in a different way, but again, if it's always I'm not knowing what I'm going to expect, then you're raising up that anxiety again, sometimes using the same tools in this framework that can also be transferred to home, because someday we're going to be back in the classroom. I hope it's sooner rather than later. But when we do, I think we know that some of these things in working with the technology and the tools, I think we know that there needs to be some instruction on those tools in the classroom and making sure that in the event that you did need to go virtual again, or if that was part of your curriculum, that you're ready for it. And so I would suggest making sure the communication with parents is always there. We often think that, okay, well, they don't need to be part of these decisions, but they do. And respecting that we don't have to have all the answers. And I think our families are really grateful whenever we don't try to pretend that we do. And so growing and learning with them and saying, what if we explored that? And then just and always meeting people where they are and helping them to go to the next spot. Are there particular tools? I think you're going to find some fun activities, just making sure that whatever it is we do is accessible to all kids.
Right, Rabbi Deb, I think that's a great stopping point. Thank you so very much for taking the time to do this today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your email. For those of you who have any follow-up questions, you are welcome to email Deb directly. I know she put that in the chat, or email me, and I am happy to talk with you guys later. And again, my email is aperez2@uoregon.edu.